Today is April the 9th. What if I'm afraid? Let's find out together what happened to the women in Mark 16 who were afraid. Let's go back to the book of Mark. In Mark chapter 16, we have the story of Jesus' resurrection. We're just going to read through the 8 verses that are here. Saturday evening, when the Sabbath ended, Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James, and Salome went out and purchased burial spices so they could anoint Jesus' body. Very early on Sunday morning, just at sunrise, they went to the tomb. On the way, they were asking each other, "Who will roll away the stone for us from the entrance to the tomb?" But as they arrived, they looked up and saw that the stone, which was very large, had already been rolled aside. When they entered the tomb, they saw a young man clothed in a white robe sitting on the right side. The women were shocked, but the angel said, "Don't be alarmed. You are looking for Jesus of Nazareth who was crucified. He isn't here. He is risen from the dead. Look, this is where they laid the body. Now go and tell his disciples, including Peter, that Jesus is going ahead of you to Galilee. You will see him there just as he told you before he died." The women fled from the tomb, trembling and bewildered, and they said nothing to anyone because they were too frightened. Now, in your text, many of you will find that there are words that occur after this, but the words are in brackets or they're italicized. In some cases, they're even in footnotes. That's because the oldest manuscripts end at this point. What a sad ending. What an unusual ending. The women didn't say anything because they were frightened. Now, there are 2 alternate endings. There is a longer ending that tells the story of more appearances, verses 9 through 11. He appears to Mary Magdalene. 12 and 13 apparently refer to the book of Luke and how Jesus appeared to the 2 on their way to Emmaus. And then verse 14, he appears to the disciples. That happens both in Luke and in the book of John. And then we have go into all the world and preach the gospel, just like Matthew says. This, the earliest document, the earliest Bible that this ending occurs in comes actually from around the 6th or 7th century. Now, there is older attestation of it actually in the 2nd century. Some of these words are quoted, but the words appear to be pulled from other passages. In fact, what Jesus says is you'll speak in tongues, you'll handle snakes, things that took place in the book of Acts. There's a shorter ending. That ending, very brief, is noted in some of our Bibles. It just says that Jesus appeared to Peter and the other disciples, and then he sent them out with the message of salvation. Is this important? If Mark ends at verse 8, does that affect what we believe? Not in the least, because we don't base what we believe about the resurrection of Jesus on Mark 16 from verses 9 to 20. We base it on a series of witnesses, Matthew, Luke, John. We base it on Paul's words in his epistles, Peter's words in his epistles, and so on and so on. There are many other sources that talk about Jesus' resurrection. What if this is indeed the very end of the book of Mark? It ends with the women frightened and hushed to silence by their fear. It's a very natural reaction. It's almost to be expected. To me, it lends credence to the story because it says they weren't perfect either. The women who saw the angel ran afraid. I think I would have too. It's not the end of the story. It might be the end of the Gospel of Mark, but it's certainly not the end of the story. Jesus gives us time to process it. The women had fear. In fact, some of the recorded appearances of Jesus to the women happen after they leave the tomb. They're crying, they're frightened, and then Jesus appears to them. Jesus will give us time to process whatever it is that we're going through. If we feel fear because of that, it's okay. Feel the fear. Tell Jesus about the fear. Let him help you process it. But by all means, process it. Only by processing it can you move on to the next phase of the story, the mission. Please like, follow, and subscribe on whatever platform you use to listen to this devotional. If you have questions for us, email us at questions@becomehope.com. On Sunday, we will begin a series on discipleship